In the name of Allah, who is the most gracious and the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Sayyida Inab Fatima and I am doing BS Biotechnology from University of Management and Technology. Today I am going to present you all the most debatable topic since 2019. Any guesses? Yes, you all guessed it right. It is COVID-19 and its vaccines. Let's have a look at the table of content. The things we are going to discuss in this presentation are: what is COVID-19, structure and symptoms of COVID-19, we will get to know the vaccination and chemistry of COVID-19, Nobel Prize on COVID-19, who won this Nobel Prize and what was the history and background of it, chemistry of coronavirus transfer, effects of COVID-19 vaccine, chemistry of first and second dose, acceptance of COVID-19 vaccines, prevention of COVID-19, major impact of pandemic on environment, and then at the end we will conclude the topic. The first question that arises in mind is, what is COVID-19? How did it start spreading? When was the first case reported? And who named it? Coronavirus disease 2019 is a respiratory disease including some other symptoms caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. SARS-CoV-2 virus basically is a type of coronavirus which is a wide class of viruses causing respiratory diseases. Coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, is the official name given by WHO, World Health Organization, to the disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. The new coronavirus that surfaced in Wuhan, China in 2019 and spread around the globe. So we got answers to our questions. First reported case and the initial reaction to COVID-19. Whenever there is some sort of new disease, there is always some sort of reaction towards it. The first reported case and the initial reaction to COVID-19 was like, it was recorded on the 31st of December 2019 when the WHO World Health Organization was informed of cases of pneumonia in Wuhan, China with no known cause. When there was an unknown cause and they thought it was pneumonia, so there was a question, is it actually pneumonia or some sort of simple respiratory disease, or there is something new happening to this world? There is some sort of new agent causing it? All these questions arise then. Initial reaction to pandemic. First, the responses revealed that people were distressed and experiencing strong feelings of fear, sadness and helpless because they were feeling helpless. This was a new disease and people started dying of it and they were having severe and mild symptoms, and it was so stressful that people thought that there will be no cure towards it, and will there anybody be able to find cure to it? And these feelings did not dissipate during the 2 months that separated wave 1 from wave 2. Let's talk about the structure of coronavirus. Whenever there is an agent causing some disease, if we want to find cure to it, we must know what is its structure, how does it behave, and how does it infect the human cell. The structure of coronavirus is like, the particles are organized with long RNA polymers tightly packed into the center of particle and surrounded by a protective capsid. Capsid is basically a proteinaceous coat, basically made up of protein, which protects the viruses, surrounds them and gives them a proper shape. Referred to as coat or capsid proteins, in coronavirus these proteins are called nucleocapsids. To better understand the structure, let's have a look at its diagram. You can see there are spikes which are embedded. These are RNA polymers. There is a membrane surrounding it and there are some sort of proteins in the outer envelope. These proteins act as receptors when the virus wants to attach to the human cell and then infect it. There is also a nucleocapsid proteinaceous coat which protects it. There is an RNA genome. Basically, this is an RNA virus. This RNA genome decides the replication of virus and its transfer of genetic material. So now we know the structure of COVID-19. When scientists got to know the structure of COVID-19, they were able to find the cure. To better understand the structure of COVID-19, let's have a look at its diagram. There is an RNA genome inside it. This is basically an RNA virus, which means RNA is responsible for its replication and the transfer of its genetic material. There are spikes which are RNA polymers embedded in the outer envelope. There is an outer envelope covering it. There is a nucleocapsid which protects it, made up of protein. Let's talk about the symptoms of COVID 19. There are always symptoms of COVID 19, which means they are the signals telling that there is some sort of disease happening to the body. People with COVID 19 have had a wide range of symptoms reported, ranging from mild symptoms to severe illness. Some people got no symptoms at all. So, this was the hottest topic of discussion at that time, that if there is a person with no symptoms at all but is infected with COVID 19 virus, and the other one which is not infected with COVID 19 virus and also had no symptoms at all, then how can you identify and distinguish between them? And how can you cure the one with no symptoms at all but is infected with COVID 19 virus? Symptoms may appear 2 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. Once a person is exposed to the virus, within this period of time, he started getting symptoms. Let's talk about the vaccination of COVID 19. What is vaccination? Vaccination is a simple, safe, and effective way of protecting you against harmful diseases before you come into contact with them. How does it work? It uses your body's natural defense to build resistance to specific infections and makes your immune system stronger. What are the types of vaccines? There are several types of vaccines, including inactivated vaccines, live or attenuated vaccines, messenger mRNA vaccines, subunit recombinant polysaccharide conjugate vaccines, toxoid vaccines, and viral vector vaccines. Let's get to the details of these vaccines. First of all, there is killed or inactivated vaccine. They use the killed variant of germ that causes disease and gives immunoglobulin M or immunoglobulin G antibodies against it. Second one is toxoid. It gets our bodies to produce antibodies to attack real toxin. It also gives IgM or IgG immune response. Third one is conjugated vaccines, which fight a type of bacteria that has antigens. It also gives immune response as IgM or IgG. RNA or nucleic acid vaccines work by introducing a piece of mRNA that corresponds to a viral protein. It gives immune response as IgM or IgG, cell-mediated immunity. The last one is live or attenuated vaccines. They use a weakened form of germ that causes a disease. They give immune response as IgM, IgG, IgA, cell-mediated. It gives IgM, IgG, IgA, cell-mediated immunity. This is how these vaccines work, and these are their types. Let's talk about the vaccine of COVID 19. The type of COVID 19 vaccine was mRNA type viral inactivated protein. As I talked about earlier, the process of inactivated protein working, a COVID 19 vaccine is a vaccine intended to provide acquired immunity against severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, the virus that causes coronavirus disease 2019. How does virus gets entered in the cell of human and how does it affect? Virus, it looks like a ball or a donut with some nucleic acid. As I talked about it earlier, the nucleic acid was RNA in the middle and spikes sticking out. These spikes have little rounded ends. This is basically the structure of the virus, and now we will get to know how it hijacks the human cell and how does it enter it. And indeed, that protein is called the spike protein. At the end of it is a piece called the receptor binding domain. I told about it earlier that there are some receptor proteins outside which get attached to the human cell and hijack it. That's the part that docks with the receptor in human tissue called the ACE receptor, which allows the virus to gain entry into the heart, the lungs, the vasculature, and other tissues. Let's have a look at the diagram to know how the coronavirus hijacks human cell. Basically, this is the coronavirus. This is the coronavirus receptor protein which attaches to the receptor of human cell. This is the transfer of genetic material RNA from virus into the human cell, and this is how it is present there and it affects human cell. Let's talk about the Nobel Prize on COVID-19. Nobel Prize on COVID-19 vaccine. There were two scientists who got Nobel Prize on COVID-19 vaccine. One was Catalin Carrico and other one was Drew Weissman. Educational history of Carrico. Carico and Drew Weissman were awarded by Nobel Prize on 2nd of October on Monday for their discoveries concerning nucleoside-based modifications that enabled the development of effective mRNA vaccines against COVID-19. As we have already discussed the working of mRNA vaccine, we will get to know the educational history of Carico. Catalin Carico, PhD, is a biochemist, a researcher best known for her contributions to mRNA technology and the COVID-19 vaccines. Nobel Prize awarded to Carico. She is only the 61st woman to ever be named a Nobel laureate. Carico received her bachelor's degree in biology in 1978 and her doctorate in biochemistry in 1982 from the University of Szeged in her native Hungary. When Carico carried out experiments with a different type of RNA molecule, tRNA, she did not observe the same immunogenic effects. That observation encouraged her and Weissman to experiment with modified nucleosides. Drew Weissman. Drew Weissman, MD, PhD, is a world-renowned physician and researcher at Penn Medicine, best known for his contributions to RNA biology and the COVID-19 vaccines. This is how Carico and Weissman started working on mRNA techniques and they developed vaccines against COVID-19. Let's talk about he and co-collaborator Catalin Carico, PhD, how they invented the vaccine. They invented the modified mRNA technology being used in Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna's vaccines for COVID-19. Let's have a look at the pictures of Catalin Carico and Drew Weissman. These are these two scientists who got awarded with Nobel Prize. Working and background of making vaccine. After a chance meeting in the late 1990s while photocopying research papers, Carico and Weissman began investigating mRNA as a potential therapeutic. In 2005, they published a key discovery saying, mRNA could be altered and delivered effectively into the body to activate a body's protective immune system. As you have noticed that there is something common between Drew Weissman and Catalin Carico's educational history. They were both so interested in mRNA techniques. That's how they started working on mRNA technologies and were able to produce vaccines against COVID-19. mRNA vaccine. Let's get to know how mRNA vaccine works and what it is. The mRNA-based vaccines elicited a robust immune response including high levels of antibodies that attack a specific infectious disease that has not previously been encountered. Let's have a look at the working of Carico and Weissman on vaccines and their background. Day after day, Dr. Weissman, Dr. Carico and their teams worked tirelessly for days and nights to unlock the power of mRNA as a therapeutic platform. Not knowing the way in which their work could serve to meet a big challenge the world would one day face, said Penn President Liz Magel. Nucleoside-based modifications, which were the center of attention at that time. In 2005, Carico and Weissman developed so-called nucleoside-based modifications which stopped the immune system from launching an inflammatory attack against lab-made mRNA. This was the basis of all this, previously seen as a major hurdle against any therapeutic use of technology. While doing all this, there was a discovery called mRNA discovery in 1961. This is a natural molecule that serves as a recipe for the body's production of proteins. Use of lab-made mRNA to instruct human cells to make therapeutic proteins, long regarded as impossible, was commercially pioneered during the pandemic, also by Moderna. Moderna is basically the institute, the biotechnology company where all this was happening. Prospective mRNA uses include cancer therapies and vaccines against malaria, rabies, etc. As we are talking about vaccination, it is most probably related to immunity. Let's talk about immunity in this process. The researchers tried reproducing some of these modifications in mRNA in the lab and then presenting the resulting molecules to immune cells called dendritic cells. In 2005, they reported in the journal Immunity that replacing an mRNA base called uridine with naturally occurring modified bases such as pseudouridine could greatly reduce the inflammatory response. So they got a way to reduce inflammatory response. Researchers of COVID-19. Over the next few years, about 3 years later, they developed the work further, showing in 2008 that the use of pseudouridine could increase the amount of protein made by cells that took up the mRNA.
Such research was key to the rapid development of vaccines to deliver the spike proteins of another coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, which causes COVID-19 disease, into human cells soon after the outbreak of COVID-19 began. Let's look at the difference of mRNA vaccine and typical vaccine. Messenger mRNA vaccines like the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines teach cells how to make a protein, while traditional vaccines put a weakened or inactivated germ into our bodies. mRNA vaccine protein triggers an immune response if someone gets infected. In typical vaccine, it uses weakened or dead microbes or pieces of them to stimulate immunity. mRNA vaccines have slightly higher effectiveness, while typical ones have lesser effectiveness. mRNA vaccines are faster to infect and affect. Typical vaccines are slower. Let's have a look at the diagram. As you can see, there is an mRNA molecule trying to attack COVID-19 virus and typical ones are also there. How does coronavirus transfer from one person to another? The disease can spread from person to person in crowded places when people sneeze and cough. When someone coughs, germs fall on the surfaces like furniture, walls, cups, plates, etc. around the person. Other people catch the disease by touching these objects or surfaces, then touching their eyes, nose, or mouth. In this way, coronavirus is transferred from one person to another through sneezes and coughs. Let's have a look at this diagram. A person is coughing or sneezing and the other person is 6 feet away. So cough or sneeze droplets are reaching other person's eyes, nose and mouth. As we can see, there is written, the virus enters the body primarily through the nose. Also, it may get in through eyes and mouth. So people who are infected must be away from the people who are not infected, at least 6 feet away. COVID-19 primarily spreads from one person to another through close contact with someone sick, typically within 1 meter. Droplets released when someone with COVID-19 sneezes, coughs, speaks can land on the mouths or noses of people nearby. So afterwards, preventive measures were taken. We will talk about those preventive measures later in the section. How COVID-19 mRNA vaccines work. As we have got enough information about how the vaccines were made, what was the process, what are mRNA techniques, what are the technologies. Now we will talk about COVID-19 mRNA vaccines working. mRNA vaccines carry genetic material that teaches our cells how to make a harmless piece of spike protein, which is found on the surface of SARS-CoV-2 virus. Genetic material from the vaccine is destroyed by our cells once copies of the spike protein are made and it is no longer needed. This is the way we have discussed about it earlier so many times. Cells display this piece of spike protein on their surface and an immune response is triggered inside our bodies. This is how we got immunity. This produces antibodies to protect us from getting infected if the SARS-CoV-2 virus enters our bodies. So if we are immune towards it, if we are immune over it, we will not get that disease because we have antibodies already present in our body. mRNA vaccines do not affect our DNA, they do not enter the cell nucleus, they can't give someone COVID-19. These are the myths we are clarifying basically. mRNA vaccines are new, but the technology is not. Why is this not a new technology? Because scientists have been working on it since 2005. It is an old technology, but the vaccines are new. mRNA vaccines have been studied for influenza, Zika, rabies and CMV. Let's talk about authorization of vaccine, that how these vaccines were available and approved by WHO. The first regulatory authorizations for mRNA vaccines were given in December 2020 to Pfizer and Biotech, which employed Carico as senior vice president until recently, and to Moderna. National regulatory authorities have granted full or emergency use authorizations for 40 COVID-19 vaccines. Finally, we have got a number for COVID-19 vaccines which were authorized. These are 40 COVID-19 vaccines. Let's talk about approval by WHO, the World Health Organization. 10 vaccines have been approved by WHO. These are Pfizer-BioNTech, Oxford AstraZeneca, Sinopharm, BIBP, Moderna, Janssen, CoronaVac, Covaxin, Novavax, Convidecia, and Sanofi GSK. Of these 40 vaccines, 16 have a full or emergency authorization in only one country, 12 in 10 or fewer countries, and 12 in more than 10 countries. COVID-19 vaccines that have received FDA emergency use authorizations, that if we need a vaccine to give it to the person in emergency, they are available and they are approved. Let's talk about these two vaccines. These are Pfizer-BioNTech, BNT1C, BNT162B2, 95% effective, manufacturer data tells that. Second one is Moderna, mRNA-1273, 94.5% effective, manufacturer data also tells that. Both are mRNA vaccines with a 2-dose schedule. What is a 2-dose schedule in these vaccines? We will talk about this in the next section in next slides. People being vaccinated should complete the 2-dose series with the same vaccine product to get full immunity. Duration of protection is not known yet. Let's have a look at this picture. Billions of people have been safely vaccinated against COVID-19. All of the ingredients in COVID-19 vaccines have been rigorously tested and found to be safe. So this clarifies all the myths regarding that these vaccines are spreading COVID-19, they are killing people, they are not good. All these myths are clarified.
Now I am gonna discuss effects of COVID-19 vaccines. Effects of COVID-19 vaccines were like, if we take a question, why is it common to have mild side effects from vaccines? We get to know the answer like, vaccines are designed to give you immunity. As we know, vaccines are there to give us immunity without the dangers of getting the disease. And mostly vaccines have different ways of producing immune response in our body. It's quite common to experience some moderate to mild side effects after it. Reason: this is because your immune system is introducing your body to react in certain, sometimes it is producing those antibodies, sometimes it is infecting through the germ which was in the vaccine. It increases blood flow so more immune cells can circulate, and it raises your body temperature to kill the virus. So mostly people after getting vaccinated get fever because our body is getting prepared to kill those foreign agents which are causing disease by getting the temperature of body high, so that those viruses, those foreign agents, those viruses, those germs get killed after it. Typical side effects of vaccine. The typical side effects of vaccine include pain at the injection site, fever, fatigue, headache, muscle pain. The first and most common systemic side effect of COVID-19 vaccines is headache, which is mild to severe and is felt in the frontal area of the head. COVID-19 vaccination also affects the cranial and peripheral nerves and causes side effects. So in this way, these vaccines affect people after getting vaccinated. Let's have a look at this picture. There is a blue area and the red area. Blue area tells the participants with no side effects after getting vaccinated, their number and percentage was 42.8%. And after this survey, we got to know 57.2% people were those who got side effects after getting vaccinated. So this gives us the data after the survey that these people got side effects, these people got no side effects after getting vaccinated. Let's talk about these COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. This is basically the summary of all the things we have been discussing about COVID-19 vaccines and their side effects. So, at least 8 weeks of safety data were gathered after participants received their second dose in the trials. It is unusual for side effects to appear more than 8 weeks after vaccination. So, people got symptoms and the side effects after getting vaccinated within those 8 weeks. After 8 weeks, it was unusual to get those side effects. These mRNA vaccines produce common side effects after vaccination, especially after the second dose. Basically, okay, we will talk about it earlier in the next slides, that what is the second dose, what is the first dose, and what is it actually. But let me tell you something. The second dose, after taking the second dose of vaccination, for an example, there is a vaccine called Pfizer, mRNA vaccine for COVID-19 disease. There is a vaccine called Pfizer. If we get its first dose and then the second dose, after getting the second dose, the vaccination is completed, and now we can say that our body is immune to COVID-19. Side effects were, as we have talked about it earlier, fever, headache, muscle pains. No significant safety concerns were identified in the clinical trials, although a number of several allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis, have been reported during the initial phases of rollout. So these were the preventive measures, these were the side effects, that people got allergic reactions, some even started vomiting. All these were related to the side effects of getting vaccination of COVID-19. Not all people have had post-vaccination effects, as we talked about the survey, that 42.7% or 8% I think were people who got no side effects after vaccination. So side effects of COVID-19 vaccination have been reported more frequently in people with a history of immune related diseases, who got diseases like in related to immune response, or who are more sensitive to age and physiological conditions. I mean, they are more sensitive. They have a sensitive body that will get fever, that will get pain at the injection site. Having a painful, heavy feeling and tenderness in the arm where you had your injection. Feeling tired was also a symptom.
How to cope with side effects? Mostly, if they felt uncomfortable, they took a paracetamol or some sort of painkiller and they took rest. Let's talk about uncommon side effects after getting vaccinated. An uncommon side effect is swollen glands in the armpit or neck on the same side as the arm where you had the vaccine. This can last for around 10 days after getting vaccinated. Cases of inflammation of heart called myocarditis or pericarditis have been richest pain. Shortness of breath, feelings of having a fast beating, fluttering or pounding heart. All these were uncommon side effects which people got. mRNA COVID 19 vaccines are highly effective in preventing infections in real world conditions. If we talk about clinics, nearly 4,000 healthcare personnel, first responders, and essential workers were tested weekly for the virus that causes COVID 19. Those who were fully vaccinated were 90% less likely to get infected, as we can say that person's system was immune towards COVID 19. Let's talk about the trials. As the vaccines were available and authorized and approved by WHO, government took trials by numbers. If we talk about Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna, we will get to know. If we talk about Pfizer first, 45,302 enrolled, 43,125 received second dose, 150 clinical sites, among them 39 US states. Racial or ethnic distribution, there were 13% Hispanic, 10% African American, 6% Asian, 1% Native American, 40% ages 56 to 85. Let's talk about Moderna. 30,000 enrolled, 25,654 received second dose, 89 clinical sites, among them 32 US states. Racial or ethnic distribution was like 63% white, 20% Hispanic, 10% African American or black, 4% Asian, 3% all others, 64% ages 45 and older. If we talk about ages, 39% ages 45 to 64, 25% ages 65 plus. Let's have a look at the benefits of COVID 19 vaccines. The first benefit that comes in mind is that it vaccinates us. It vaccinates our system. It makes us immune from disease. But let's get to the details of benefits of COVID 19 vaccine. Vaccines can protect us from getting COVID 19 by preventing us from getting infected at all and by preventing us from getting sick, ending up in the hospital or dying of it. Because when the pandemic started, people started dying of it and they started getting sick of it. Vaccines can also prevent us from transmitting the virus to others. For an example, if our system is immune, we will not spread the virus. We will not get other people infected of our virus. Benefit for expectant mothers and newborns. This is the most important thing to know. The vaccine can help your unborn baby or newborn. Studies have found that expectant mothers who receive the COVID 19 vaccine create antibodies to the virus and pass those to their unborn baby through the placenta, because mothers transfer things through placenta to their unborn babies. In this way, somehow the unborn babies were also vaccinated. Mothers were also shown to pass antibodies to their newborns through breast milk. This suggests those newborns were somehow immune of the virus, which is especially important as young children can't get the vaccine, because vaccines are basically age specific. People of specific age can get the vaccine and other people cannot. These are specificities of vaccine. Let's have a look at this diagram. There are 5 basic benefits. Number 1, boost the immunity by creating an antibody, which is the basis of mRNA vaccines immune response. Number 2, prevent and reduce the risk of severe illness. Number 3, reduce the risk of death from COVID 19. Number 4, reduce the risk of spreading. Number 5, reconnection with society. Let's talk about significance of doses of COVID 19 vaccines. Let's talk about the first dose and then the second dose. Your first dose is like the primer on the wall that creates the surface in your immune system for response and a bit of a response itself. And then you put on the final coat, and the final coat really does give you the protection. This will be the second dose of the COVID 19 vaccine. So getting second dose was that much important, that without second dose we were not fully vaccinated. This is why it is important for everyone to get 2 doses of COVID 19 vaccines. Prime and boost strategy. The second one gives you a much deeper and stronger immune response that's gonna stick. You need 2 doses of COVID 19 vaccine because it's called the prime and boost strategy. This strategy is similar to painting a wall that has not had paint on it before. You first put on a primer and then the second dose acts as the final coat. The second dose not only induces cellular immunity, which is the immune response for longer protection, but it also provides you with better protection against variant strains. As we know, mostly viruses have their variants which keep changing with time. So second dose made us fully vaccinated of it. Receiving only 1 dose does not provide you with the full protection and does not give you the full effectiveness of the vaccine. Let's have a look at this diagram. If we talk about the first dose of AstraZeneca, Moderna, or Pfizer, any mRNA vaccine of COVID 19, and the second dose of any mRNA vaccine like Moderna, Pfizer, within 2 weeks, we will build immunity and we are fully vaccinated. Let's talk about myths and facts of COVID 19 and its vaccines. If we talk about myths and facts, getting a COVID 19 vaccination is a safer and more dependable way to build immunity to COVID 19 than getting sick of it. Let's have a look at myths and facts one by one. Number 1. Are vaccines safe of COVID 19? At the start of pandemic, when there were vaccines available, people started saying that there is COVID 19 inside the vaccines. So people are getting sick after getting vaccinated. But obviously, it was a myth. COVID 19 vaccine is safe of causing COVID to the recipients. Number 2. COVID 19 vaccines do not cause new variants. Fact. New variants of COVID 19 virus happen because the virus that causes COVID 19 constantly changes through a natural ongoing process of mutation. COVID 19 vaccines do not create or cause variants of the virus that causes COVID 19. As the COVID 19 virus spreads, it has more opportunities to change. Number 3. COVID 19 vaccines do not contain microchips and they cannot make you magnetic. So basically, this was all related to chemistry and physics, and people started indulging it to COVID 19 vaccines. Vaccines are developed to fight against disease, they don't contain any sort of these things. Number 4. COVID 19 vaccines track your movement or not. COVID 19 vaccines are not administered to track your movement. Why would they? They are free from manufactured products such as microelectronics, electrodes, carbon nanotubes, and nanowire semiconductors. Number 6. Do COVID 19 vaccines produce electromagnetic force? Again, indulging chemistry. COVID 19 vaccines are free from metals such as iron, nickel, cobalt, lithium, and rare earth alloys. They don't contain ingredients that can produce an electromagnetic field at the site of your injection. They are just simple vaccines. Number 7. COVID 19 vaccines will not affect fertility. Fact. Currently, no evidence shows that any vaccines, including COVID 19 vaccines, cause fertility problems to men or women. COVID 19 vaccination is recommended for people who are pregnant, trying to get pregnant now, or might become pregnant in the future, as well as their partners, to make their systems immune. COVID 19 vaccines are safe and do not affect fertility or cause sterility. There is no evidence that COVID 19 vaccines cause infertility or sterility in men or women. The Therapeutic Goods Administration (TGA) only approves vaccines that are safe and effective. In this way, COVID 19 vaccines don't do such sort of things. Number 8. COVID 19 vaccines do not alter DNA. Fact. COVID 19 vaccines do not change or interact with your DNA in any way directly, but they give message. Their messenger RNA and protein subunit COVID 19 vaccines work by delivering instructions, basically the message to your cells, to start building protection or immunity against the virus, producing antibodies or some sort of other things. Number 9. Does body get rid of ingredients of vaccine after getting vaccinated? Yes, after the body produces an immune response, it gets rid of all the vaccine ingredients just as it would get rid of any information that cells no longer need. This process is a part of body functioning normally. Number 10. Should one get vaccinated if have allergy? The CDC says that people who have had a severe allergic reaction, specifically anaphylaxis or an immediate allergic reaction to an ingredient in either the Pfizer or Moderna, which are the COVID 19 vaccines, should not get either one. There were also some people who got allergic reaction after the first shot. So should one get second shot if have allergy? People who have a severe or immediate allergic reaction after the COVID 19 vaccine first shot should not get the second one of either mRNA vaccine. Vaccines of COVID 19 in pregnant women transfer COVID 19 to fetus. As we touched this point earlier, let's get to the details of this point, which is a very important point. Vaccines are highly effective in producing antibodies against the SARS-CoV-2 virus in pregnant and lactating women. The study also demonstrated the vaccines confer protective immunity to newborns through breast milk and transferring it through placenta to the unborn baby. Vaccines generated antibodies. Vaccine-generated antibodies were also present in all umbilical cord blood and breast milk samples taken from the study, showing the transfer of antibodies from mothers to newborns. This is basically a natural process which mothers transfer their nutrients and things to the newborns through placenta. So when mothers are vaccinated and there is an unborn baby, they will transfer that vaccine through placenta to the unborn baby. So that unborn baby is also vaccinated now. Evidence about COVID-19. We now have clear evidence after talking about myths and facts and clarifying them that COVID-19 vaccines can induce immunity that will protect infants, said Gallet Elter, core member of the Reagan Institute and co-senior author of the study. Now I am going to talk about acceptance of COVID-19 vaccine. Whenever there is something new, people take time to accept it. They start spreading myths and facts and start believing the myths, so they take time to accept it. Let's get to the detail of this thing. At the time, participants got vaccinated, and according to the present study, the majority of participants had a positive attitude towards COVID-19 vaccine. But there were only less than half people who had no awareness of the vaccine. Reasons for not accepting. In addition, the acceptability of the vaccine is low. Reasons were they were afraid of long-term effects, they were not convinced of the safety profile, there was lack of information and awareness. The time used for the development were the common reasons for refusing the vaccine. Let's have a look at this picture. COVID-19 vaccine acceptance. There were 55.8% participants who were aware of vaccine acceptance and they accepted it. Reasons were self-protection, to protect others, to be able to travel, belief in vaccination. Predictors of acceptance were history of previous COVID-19 infection, belief in vaccine safety, confidence that vaccination can end the pandemic, history of other vaccinations. These were the participants who believed that vaccination can save the world. Let's talk about people who hesitated while getting vaccinated. Their percentage was 44.2%. Reasons were safety concern, effectiveness concern, heard bad news, to wait and see. These participants basically believed the myths which were spread over COVID-19 vaccine. To better understand the unwillingness and willingness toward the COVID-19 vaccine, let's have a look at this graph. There is percentage of unwilling to take the vaccine and the reasons for that. First reason is people were not sure about safety and their percentage was 22.6%. Number 2, the vaccine is not effective. 1.9% people believe that. COVID-19 disease is not a serious disease. 1.1% people believe that. They were afraid from injection. 1.1% approximately. There were some people who had no time for getting vaccinated. Their percentage was 0.3%. And there were some people who included religious reasons in terms of getting vaccination, and they were 0.2%. After getting to know the structure of virus, the way of processing and infecting the human cell, there were also diagnostic tests for COVID-19 to identify the patients from the normal people. Number 1, molecular tests. Molecular tests such as polymerase chain reaction, PCR, and other nucleic acid amplification tests which detect genetic material called RNA from the virus. This was identification of RNA from the virus. Number 2, antigen tests. In these tests, rapid tests or for some at home or self-tests which detect proteins called antigens from the virus. Number 3, antibody tests. Antibody or serology tests look for antibodies in your blood that your immune system produced in response to the virus that causes COVID-19. Let's talk about swab samples, which were the most common way for testing COVID-19. They used a swab similar to a long Q-tip to collect a sample from the nose or throat. The sample's locations were anterior near nasal, takes a sample from just inside the nostrils. Mid-turbinate takes a sample from further up inside the nose. Nasopharyngeal takes a sample from deep inside the nose, reaching the back of the throat, and should only be collected by a trained healthcare provider because it could be dangerous. Oropharyngeal takes a sample from the middle part of the throat, pharynx just beyond the mouth, and should only be collected by a trained healthcare provider. It could also be dangerous. Last one were saliva samples are collected by spitting into a tube rather than using a nose or throat swab. Blood samples are only used to test for antibodies and not to diagnose COVID-19. Venous blood samples are typically collected at doctor's office or clinic. Some antibody tests use blood samples from a finger stick. To understand the locations of the samples better, let's have a look at this diagram. Anterior nares were this location, midturbinate was this location, nasopharyngeal as you can see was this location, and oropharyngeal was from this location. So this is how the samples for the diagnostic tests were taken. Let's have a look at this diagram. If we talk about diagnostic tests, there were also some diagnostic strategies, and three were the main diagnostic strategies. Number one were antibodies against SARS-CoV-2 virus, searching for antibodies in the body which immune system produced against the virus. Antibody tests. Number two, SARS-CoV-2 genome, molecular tests identifying the RNA of the virus. Number three, antigen tests, SARS-CoV-2 structural proteins or whole virus. At the time of pandemic, people started taking preventive measures and government also forced them. They started staying at home, used surgical gloves, used hand sanitizers to clean their hands repeatedly, wore face masks and clean everything. If we get to the detail of this thing, health experts' opinion suggests that wearing face masks in public and social distancing between two people and crowd could become the new norm at many workplaces. In the light of the current scenario at that time, it was vital for employers to plan accordingly and implement infection prevention and control measures at workplaces to stop spreading COVID-19. Let's have a look at this picture. We can see basic preventive measures were washing hands repeatedly, coughing and sneezing into elbow, disposing garbage and waste immediately, cleaning surface timely, avoiding public transport to avoid people contact, appointment before going to a clinic or hospital. People started isolating themselves in homes. Work from home, specifically wearing a mask was the basic thing. So all these preventive measures were taken and they helped a lot in coping with the spread of COVID-19 at that time. Let's have a look at this picture. This tells how the COVID-19 virus spreads. When we are in contact with other people, it starts spreading. Grouping also spreads it. So there must be a distance of 1 meter between two people. Stop shaking hands with people. Then wash your hands and face and skin repeatedly. Start using hand sanitizers. All these things were the basic preventive measures at that time. Now I am going to talk about effects of COVID-19. COVID-19 majorly affected the environment and everything around us, including society, people, their relationships, their financial issues. It started affecting everything. Effects of COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic caused a massive collapse in human capital at critical moments in the life cycle, derailing development for millions of children and young people in low and middle income countries. Number one, loss of lives, which was the basic and the most worst thing ever. The first impact was the millions of lives lost due to the disease caused by the COVID-19 virus. Approximately 6 billion people have died so far from the coronavirus COVID-19. Let's have a look at this picture. This picture tells how worse the situation was at that time. Number two, increasing poverty. During the pandemic, people lost jobs, they economically became weak, youngsters had no jobs opportunities, the jobbians were facing job difficulties. All this was happening and this was affecting financial health. Effects on educational system. This also had a major impact on educational system and people's career. Public health experts had decided that keeping educational institutions open would lead to further spread of virus. So as preventive measure, they closed the educational institutions. The quality of education severely decreased all over the world due to this lockdown. COVID-19 led to the closure of most of the educational institutes, schools, colleges, academies, universities, and all other institutions. In the educational system, it shifted from physical classes to online learning in higher education in the major parts of the world. Let's have a look at this picture. This is a girl who is going to school, but at the time of pandemic they shifted physical classes to online classes, so students stopped going to schools, universities and other institutes for education. Why education at institutions is so important? So we have basic 6 points here. Learning is understood developmentally. So if we are physically present there, we will understand everything better. Number 2, the classroom offers a safe base. Number 3, the importance of the nurture for the development of well-being. Number 4, language is a vital means of communication. Number 5, all behavior is communication. Number 6, the importance of transition in the lives of children and young people. So now we know the importance of education physically. Major impact on children and youth. Most of the impact was on children and youth who happened to be between 4 and 25 years old in 2020 and 2021, generating a huge intergenerational inequality. So if you talk about, there is a quote, the future of a billion kids around the world is at risk unless we get them back in school again and find ways to remedy the effects of interruption. COVID 19 will result in a huge setback for this generation in terms of educational facilities. Waste generation. Let's have a look at this picture. There is waste everywhere. Increased biomedical waste generation due to excessive use of safety equipments and its disposal, and municipal solid waste generation. Plastic pollution continues to increase because people started wearing masks which were made of plastic, other personal protective equipments, and disposable medical waste. So, waste started increasing all over the world. Risks to food safety. If we talk about the risks to food safety at the world level globally, it increased risks to food safety by increasing prices and lowering revenues, forcing households to reduce their food consumption in terms of quality and quantity. So, this was the basic risk at that time, that people started suffering of food. Effect on industries and transport. Many industries in different countries were closed and transport was stopped due to lockdown because government was avoiding physical contact between people, so they closed public transport, they made lockdown, they made people isolate in their houses. It led people to face difficulties in moving from one place to other. Psychological health issues increased. At the time, there were also some psychological issues which increased due to limited movement. People were unable to go outside and earn for their families and thus suffered from several social and psychological disorders, including some financial issues. So, this affected their psychological and mental health. Example, they went through depression and anxiety. Let's have a look at this picture. It shows the people through depression and anxiety. What was the effect of this on economy? It majorly affected economy all over the world. COVID as pandemic caused huge fall in economy due to loss of jobs and earning facilities worldwide. People have no jobs. People have nothing to earn. Also had effect on GDP growth. After COVID-19 took Pakistan into its grasp, if we talk particularly about Pakistan, it forced major disruptions in the country's economic activities. The result was that for the second time in Pakistan's history, first time was 1951 to 52, it was a period of time when Pakistan was facing fall in growth rate. It experienced a negative GDP growth rate, 0.4% for the fiscal year 2020. Let's have a look at this picture. It shows the reading in 2018. In Pakistan, GDP growth rate was 5.5%. It decreased in 2019 when the pandemic started to about 3.3%. In 2020 forecast, it shows 2.6% GDP growth rate. In 2021, it increased a little bit when the economy was establishing again to 3.2%. Let's have a look at the positive impacts of COVID-19 as it affected the environment, people, society so much. It also had some sort of positive impacts on everything. Number 1, decrease in atmospheric pollution and GHG emission. So, when there is lockdown, there are many pollutant gases, particularly PM10, PM2.5, ozone, carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, all these are pollutant gases. So, in the atmosphere, due to lockdown, they started releasing less as compared to earlier. Let's have a look at this graph. This picture shows the decrease in the emission of nitrogen dioxide. In Karachi, it decreased about 35% emission. Islamabad and Rawalpindi, it decreased about 56%. In Lahore, about 49%. Multan, 20%. And in Peshawar, 45% again. Continuing the positive impacts of pandemic on environment, there was huge decrease in water contamination. The ongoing water pollution caused by industrialization, overexploitation and rapid urbanization was decreased during the period of lockdown due to the stoppage of wastewater disposal, plastics and crude oil because these activities were restricted at that time. Let's talk about decrease in noise pollution. The higher levels of noise produced from various activities, example heavy machines, construction works, vehicles, all these activities were stopped as we have talked about these activities many times. It had a great impact on humans and other living beings. The reason was during COVID-19 pandemic, the level of noise pollution decreased in major metropolitan cities due to lockdown and lack of transportation activities. Let's have a look at this picture and we will get to know the importance of pandemic and its effect on decrease in noise pollution. This was how New York City sounded last year. For an example, if we take an example of February 28, 2019, it was sounded like this. But during lockdown 2020, 24th April, it sounded like this. So this picture shows the effect of pandemic on noise pollution. Let's talk about air quality and climate. Air quality and climate got better due to less exertion of gases out of various industries and less use of transportation. Reports are indicating that during COVID-19 induced lockdown, not only the air quality but water quality in rivers and water bodies is also improving. The stoppage of discharging industrial effluents and other wastes into water led to an apparent positive effect on water quality. Let's talk about less fuel consumption. Reduced road transport and fewer air travels across the globe considerably decreased consumption. This pandemic is a great opportunity for us to learn that how urban traffic and transportation can be monitored to reduce the expenditure of fuel, its consumption, and maintain a healthy environment around us. Let's have a look at this picture. This picture shows the fossil fuel consumption in US during the pandemic. Jet fuel consumption decreased about 54%, gasoline consumption about 36%, coal consumption about 22%, natural gas was increased in usage about 8%, wind about 20% increased, and solar energy usage was also increased for about 20%. Significant measures taken by government. At the time of pandemic, government took significant measures to cope with the issue and to cope the pandemic. So there was recovery plan of economy, measures to boost economy, provision of food to backward areas because people were suffering due to financial issues and were not provided with food, helpline for awareness about COVID-19 and markets banned. Social distancing at crowded places was must. Usage of masks and hand sanitizers was also a must. Free vaccination provided to every single person. Public transport banned for a while. Strengthened national laboratory capacity. Major effect of COVID-19 on Pakistan as it affected globally. So if we talk about specifically Pakistan, there was the major issue of unemployment in Pakistan during the pandemic. Pakistan would be left with 25 million unemployed due to the lockdown, pushing millions towards poverty and hunger. Conclusion. So if we want to conclude this topic, we will say that the way pandemic destroyed economy, the same way it caused some positive effects on environment. The vaccines for COVID-19 did well and saved millions of lives. The government took specific measures to cope with it and controlled it. After hearing me out, I hope you all got an overview of the topic COVID-19 and its vaccines, their chemistry and their working and their effect on human body. Thank you so much for hearing me out. I hope you all liked my presentation. To get yourself updated with the latest knowledge of science and chemistry, please subscribe to this channel, Dr. Hammad Majeed. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.